Well, my friends, today is such an important show that I actually got a haircut for today's show. The right wing is now attacking John Fetterman for his stroke, and yet they continue to say absolutely nothing about Herschel Walker's complete inability to think or speak or coherently explain his views on even a single issue, making it very obvious that this isn't really about John Fetterman's condition. So let's back up and kind of reset the stage. In Pennsylvania, there's a very important Senate race. The Republican nominee is television Dr. Mehmet Oz. The Democratic nominee is the Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. John Fetterman had a stroke some months ago, and as part of his recovery, he is having auditory processing issues. And as a result, we learned recently during an NBC interview that when he is interviewed, he uses closed captioning, meaning that there is a voice to text mechanism which shows him on a screen what he is being asked. To kind of contextualize that, here's a report explaining it and an interview he gave using that technology.
Another pivotal Senate race in Pennsylvania, now considered a toss-up. Our Dasha Burns spoke with Democrat John Fetterman in his first in-person sit-down interview since he suffered a stroke. And Dasha, this was not a typical candidate interview.
No, Lester, because of his stroke, Fetterman's campaign required closed captioning technology for this interview to essentially read our questions as we ask them. And Lester, in small talk before the interview, without captioning, it wasn't clear he was understanding our conversation.
Can voters trust that you will be able to do this job on day one?
Yeah, of course.
This is Pennsylvania Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman's first in-person sit-down interview since a stroke sidelined him from the campaign trail for months.
That auditory processing where I'll hear someone speaking, but sometimes I'll be able to be precise on what exactly that they're saying. I use captioning.
His campaign required that he be allowed to use a transcription program on his computer during our interview.
I always thought I was pretty empathetic, emphatic. I think I was very, empathetic. That's an example of the stroke, empathetic.
All right, so you get the picture. Now, I am not going to pretend for a second that this is a non-issue. What we are told by doctors is that this is not a cognitive issue of Fetterman understanding concepts, but that it is an auditory processing issue, which often takes time to get back to normal for someone who has suffered a stroke. In other words, it's turning the audio into meaningful messages in his brain. Now, the right, many on the right are saying he should just withdraw immediately. And in fact, as if this is going to be a fair conversation, Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo had Fetterman's opponent, Mehmet Oz, on, and she said the following.
Well, it's also very questionable to understand the need for this computer to be with him. I mean, how is he going to make decisions about Pennsylvania and fight for the Pennsylvanian people if, in fact, he needs to have a device alongside him? So, I mean, is this just all the time he needs that device?
Now, by the way, Maria Bartiromo can't even do a TV show without a teleprompter and an earpiece where producers can talk to her. So it's kind of a weird direction to go.
Just during an interview? I don't understand.
No one knows. We've not been actually exposed to this before. It's the first in-person interview. Here we are, less than a month before the election, and I've been asking John Fetterman to answer questions on the campaign trail. Initially, he wasn't even on the campaign trail for the first couple months, but answer questions from voters, answer questions from reporters while you're actually campaigning. That's what we normally do in a democracy. And the concern, of course, is that if you don't ever leave your home and answer questions, we don't know the answers to the questions you're asking.
All right,
but
so this is the approach that they're going with here. The reality is that while we can be concerned about Fetterman's recovery, Oz is so dangerous and so unqualified and so pathetic that, of course, Pennsylvania voters should still vote for John Fetterman. If indeed what we are being told by doctors about Fetterman's condition is wrong, or his recovery goes in a different way than predicted, I'm thinking ahead many steps, but he could resign and hopefully then Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro can select a replacement until the next election. Oz has no business even being in this race. And so there is really no choice to be made here. Now, here's John Fetterman's take on all this.
Will you be releasing updated information from your doctor on your health before November 8th?
I would say that if there was anything that changed or whatever, I absolutely would have updated that. Other than the progress that I've made, it's evident. I certainly would have been able to sit in front of you back in May or in June, or July, because they recovered the kind of recovery that I need in order to be absolutely, getting better and better. And I think the ultimate kinds of transparency is to be in front of thousands of people on a stage, not using a teleprompter. Most often kinds of politicians use a teleprompter, but nobody wonders if he or she is able to do the job or anything like that. And it's simply about that. That's the kind of campaign that I've run on.
So listen, we can all be honest and recognize that that this is not the same John Fetterman right now from before the stroke. We can also understand that there's not really a choice here where, Fetterman had a stroke, so we're going to vote for the completely clueless, unqualified hypocrite Mehmet Oz. That doesn't make any sense either. And the right, in a very contrived way, talking about this in the context of Fetterman, but yet they don't even mention that Herschel Walker, the Republican candidate in Georgia, cannot speak, cannot think, lies endlessly, and you can't tell if he's disoriented or deliberately lying or what. They are total hypocrites. And if you are going to raise these questions about Fetterman now, where have you been for a year on Herschel Walker, who is an embarrassment to the mere concept of a candidacy? Let's talk a little bit about Herschel Walker next.